Hey, you, I need you to hit the subscribe button below.
All praises to the Most High. We about to get into the main topic of tonight. All right, behind bars, wrongfully convicted. We're also gonna open up the phone lines. All right, so make sure y'all call in. Okay, all praises to the Most High.
And that number is 863-877-0693. We're gonna go into wrongful conviction. So let's play that first video. Let's get into it. This is something that affects our people at alarming rates.
Right.
Most brothers and sisters. Hey, how many of y'all know somebody in your family that's in prison?
Yeah.
Nope. All praise. That's good, Ezekiel.
Hey, I'll wait. Cause I got a story about that.
Oh
though.
my God.
I got a legit story, right?
Oh man.
Right.
Oh, bring it out.
Should I tell that story?
Yes, absolutely.
No?
I said absolutely. Absolutely.
Bring your
means no.
story out. Bring your story out.
All right. Let me
Get the
think
violin.
of-
You've been arrested.
It ain't one of them type of stories.
Nah, this is
I'm trying to
weird.
think of the most tasteful way to say this without going on full blast.
Very
right now.
weird.
But for real, y'all, that's what we do on pianos. Now, I used to work for the Marine Corps after I got out the Marines, right? So I was working at an instructor on this urban assault lane.
Right.
So I'm doing my job, training other Marines, clearing doors, clearing houses and whatnot. And I have some gentlemen that come down to my job, and they're looking for me personally.
Right.
And they go, "Hey, are you Ezekiel Israel?" They didn't say that.
Right,
They said
right,
my
yeah.
slave name.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
So I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Ezekiel. Hey, what's going on?" They're like, "Hey, we're two detectives,
Dang.
and we want you to come downtown with us."
Right.
So lo and behold, I go downtown. I'm sitting in an interrogation room.
Wow.
And they put one picture on the table, and they go, "Hey, Mr. Israel, who's that?" I'm like, "Yo, that's me." Fair enough, right?
Hey.
And they put another picture on the table, and they're like, "Who's this?" And instantly, I saw the picture, and I was like, in my mind at least, I was like, "Yo, it was a guy robbing a bank, yo," and he looked exactly like me, yo.
Yeah.
I was like, "Yo, what's going on right now?" So they're like, "Yo, we got you. Just tell us where the money is."
Right. Dang.
And I'm like, "Yo, I ain't never robbed
Right.
nothing in my life. I ain't never stole candy out the store. None of that." So I ended up spending the weekend in jail.
Mm.
Some guy robbed a bank that looked exactly
Right.
like me.
How'd you get out?
I had an alibi.
Okay.
So at the same time this guy's robbing a bank,
Right.
I was visiting a good friend of mine
Yeah.
that was actually in jail.
Dang.
Dang.
Wow. You was in prison.
So you was
yeah,
in the
right.
system. They had you logged on.
I was a visitor though. I was just
Mm.
visiting. I was visiting one of my good
Dang.
friends that was locked up.
Is-
So that was my alibi. But I had to spend a weekend in jail, man.
Tell
For the
them.
second
you know?
time.
Tell them the
So yeah.
identifying detail that.
So they're like, "No, this is you.
Right.
This is you." And I'm like, "Y'all ain't got fingerprints?
Right.
Y'all need something, man." They're like, "Yeah, that's what they said." They're like, "Look," and they lied. It was like, "We took these pictures to the FBI and had them analyzed, and you know what? The ears match exactly."
Dang.
I was like, "I'm going to jail over ears.
Wow.
Over ears. I'm going to jail over ears."
Dang.
But nah, look. There's a lot of people in jail right now off the strength of
Right.
that,
Right.
because a lot of what these what the law enforcement do, what they do is they'll want to coerce you
Right.
into just doing a
So
confession.
yeah. Stop right there. We're gonna get into that.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into that because we only got 40 minutes. So I appreciate you calling in. So let's play that first video.
For a crime you didn't commit. What do you do?
Pause. So this guy is the founder of the Innocence Project. If any of y'all seen Just Mercy, pretty much something like that. So it's somebody that represents people that are innocent. So he's telling you what to do if you're wrongfully convicted. What to do. Go ahead.
What do you do?
Wow.
Remember the words. I want a lawyer. Maybe you know something.
Now, we just so happen to have somebody of legal expertise. I'm not going to put all this information out there for various reasons. But would you agree with that first? Would you agree with that,
Yes.
Officer Mackay?
First thing you need to do is shut up. Is that's the first thing. You know, not blah blah blah. I didn't do it. Try to fight your case. Shut the hell up.
So shut up.
Shut up. That's number one.
That's number one.
Number two is demand a lawyer.
Gotcha.
That's what you do after you shut up.
Okay. All right. So he agrees with that. First play.
Peripheral about a crime scene. Maybe you heard something. You don't have to spill your guts right away. Wait until you have a lawyer. Then you can make your statements. I want you to remember a couple of phone numbers, because if you get arrested and you're given that, everyone knows about that phone call you get, or some places 2 phone calls, you have to know numbers. If you don't know them, they're not going to give you your phone. You're going to get a pay phone. Your Miranda rights, they're there for a reason. Don't waive them. People who've been wrongfully convicted often waived their Miranda rights because they thought they had nothing to fear by saying what was on their mind. Often we'll hear these lines like, well, I thought if I just told the truth, I could go home because I didn't do anything. That may not be the best course of action. Don't waive your Miranda.
So I wanted you to expand upon that, because I know myself, I don't deal with law enforcement that much. So it was like, somebody would say, hey, did you do this or do that? I probably would have said, no, I didn't. Let me hear why you say don't say anything, and kind of like what we was talking about off the camera.
Right. So a lot of people think that the cops are on their side.
Right.
That's the biggest misconception that a lot of people have, because the cops will be like, you know what, if you just tell us the truth, we'll get you off, la la la. Seen it a million times, right? So the good thing about having your Miranda rights protect you is that the cops are not allowed to ask you questions that will elicit an incriminating response. Meaning, if they ask you about the weather and you come out and say, I did it, I'm so sorry, and then you show up to court today, you go, I got this guy. Lawyer, I didn't waive my Miranda rights. He never asked me Miranda rights, and I told him the whole story. Well, my first question to you is going to be, what question did he ask you? Right. Because if they ask you what the weather was and you spill your guts, that doesn't fall under Miranda. Miranda is, hey, brother, why did you kill that woman? Oh, I killed her because this and that. Then they have to ask you Miranda rights. But when people come up in the court and they say, oh, the cop didn't ask me my Miranda rights, they don't have to. Unless they're asking you questions in order to elicit an incriminating response, then that's when Miranda needs to come out.
All right. So that's heavy information right there. We feeding the people. Go ahead, first play.
Rights. And remember, you have the right to a lawyer, and once you insist on that right, the questioning must stop. Most of the TV shows, the Law and Orders, the CSIs, the bad guy gets caught, the community is safe, and everyone feels better. Sadly, that's not the reality. Even in a perfect system, mistakes would be made. Even if everyone was doing the best that they could to ensure that justice is done, there are always going to be mistakes. The incidence of wrongful conviction, there's so many different causes. In some cases, especially if it's a more high-profile crime, there's a lot of pressure from the media, from people's superiors, could even be from the mayor's office, to get a particular case solved. Amanda Knox, very famous example of that. One of the main themes of what leads to these wrongful convictions is that people are taken by surprise and they don't react in a way that will be most helpful to themselves. I want to go back in time and be like, shake these people and go, no, you say the following words, I want a lawyer. Say that, but they don't know. I know what you're thinking. This only happens to people from the other side of town, from the other side of the tracks, whatever it is. Wrong. This can happen to anyone, and it has happened to people from all walks of life. It's happened to people of all races. It's happened to people from all socioeconomic statuses. Everyone is vulnerable to this ultimate nightmare, because what could be worse than being wrongfully convicted and sent to prison for a crime you didn't commit? I can't think of anything.
So it says every year, roughly 150 are released. Every expert say thousands are still incarcerated for crimes they didn't commit. Press play. All right. So that just sets the tone. What you got to say?
Now, it's interesting that he had to kind of introduce the sleeping pill in there, right? Because what he said was nobody's exonerated. This could happen to anybody from all walks of life. But what he left out was who it affects primarily.
Right.
It affects, the so-called Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. When you look at it, the numbers are catastrophic, opposing us in terms of how it affects us more. White people don't have police come through their neighborhoods and just snatch every crime. Hey, brother, you fit the description. That's not what happens. It's our people that get affected by this thing. He kind of ignores that with his statement right there.
Right. Now, you're 100% correct. And actually, the Bible backs that up. Let's go to Isaiah 42, I think it is. People robbed and spoiled. Let's get that. So, this thing, it does affect us, and it affects us more because we have a lower socio-economic status. White people have lawyers.
Right.
We don't have lawyers. So, a lot of times, we're not able to fight the legal battles that they're able to.
And they got the complexion for protection.
There you go.
Yeah.
And
There you go.
You know, the horrible aspect of it is when you actually do get a lawyer, you get a public, because a lot of our people can't afford a private attorney, so you'll get a public defender. And I remember I saw a Dave Chappelle skit, and they had the public defender come through. He had like the fat stack of case files. It's literally like that sometimes with some public defenders,
Right.
and they don't care
Right.
at all.
I will say, I have to say this because I come from a public defender background. So the issue with public defenders is not always that they don't care, because in every public defender system that exists, because not every place has a public defender system where they have a dedicated office with dedicated lawyers who are a part of that firm, right? In some places, it's basically leased out. You have private attorneys who do it on the side, who are paid by the county to come in and represent these people.
Pro bono.
Not pro bono, but for a very small nominal fee. It's not very much money, so it's not really worth their time. The time and effort that they would have to put into it will be hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases, in these bigger cases, to prove their innocence, and they just don't have the resources because, again, it's essentially preying on the fact that our people are poor.
Yep.
Right, so what happens is you have this system where you have this state where they have all this money and resources to lock you up, and then on the side of the small guy, you have a man who can't really, because of either the caseload or the incentive to do so, represent the case because he's doing it basically for free if he's not a part of a public defender system, and then you have the state who basically the method of the case is always, he's guilty. So you don't have to fight very hard to go for the conviction. It works against you in all points.
Hey. So read that scripture.
The book of Isaiah, chapter 42 and verse 22. But this is a people robbed and spoiled.
But what?
This is a people robbed and spoiled.
Now notice it said this is a people. It ain't saying that all races read creeds and no, this people is robbed and spoiled. Read.
They are all of them snared in holes.
Snared in holes is being wrongfully convicted. Read.
And they are hid in prison.
And they are what?
And they are hid in prison houses.
And they are hid in the prison house. How? Through being wrongfully convicted. Read.
They are for a prey.
They are what?
They are for a prey.
Our people are the prey. We the people that's being affected by this.
Right.
Like you said, he didn't say who the primary individuals were. But we know. Read.
And none delivereth.
And nobody delivers the Israelites.
Right.
Nope. Open and shut case. Hey, go to the next video. Unless y'all want to add something on that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Give me the book of Psalms, chapter 69 and verse 4 real quick. This was a prophecy about Christ, because as we continue, we may even have to hit this thing a couple more times because there's women involved. There's children involved in this thing. Wrongfully convicted, and guess what? It's nothing new to us throughout the scriptures as well.
There you go.
So, as we continue to go, we're gonna bring out biblical examples of how our people have always been wrongfully convicted. Go ahead.
The
That's
book of
right.
Psalms, chapter 69 and verse 4.
Come on.
They that hate me without a cause are more than the hairs of mine head.
Right. This was a prophecy of Christ. Even though it's spoken by David, it happened to David and it's happening to Christ. Read it again.
They that hate me without a cause are more than the hairs of mine head.
The same with us in IUIC.
Mm.
We look at those that hate us. Why do they hate us? We teach the truth.
Right.
Read.
They that would destroy me, being my enemies wrongfully.
Read that again.
They that would destroy me, being my enemies wrongfully,
Come on.
are mighty.
Mm-hmm.
Then I restored that which I took not away.
Right. So wrongfully, we are hated wrongfully by this nation, by this system called America. And the sooner we wake up, the sooner we're gonna realize that, hey, this place is not for us.
Right.
We got to come together in that thing.
I got a precept.
Yes, sir.
Psalms 35 and 19.
Bring it out.
Psalms 35 and 19 and 20.
The book of Psalms, chapter 35 and verse 19.
Uh-huh.
Let not them that are mine enemies wrongfully
Uh-huh.
rejoice over me.
Don't let the enemies rejoice over us. Read.
Neither let them wink with the eye
Uh-huh.
that hate me without a cause.
And that's what's going on. They hate us.
Yeah.
They have no reason. Read.
For they speak not peace.
For what?
For they speak not peace.
They don't really speak peace. Read.
But they devise deceitful
But what?
matters. But they devise deceitful matters.
How can we lock this Negro up? How can we say Ezekiel Israel is the person that robbed this bank? Let's see. I got it. The ears.
Mm-hmm.
The ears match up. That's what we'll use.
Yep. Them big old floppy things. Right?
Dang.
Yeah.
Read.
But they devise deceitful matters against them that are quiet in the land.
See that? Against them that are quiet in the land. Because when you really look at it, what Israel does here in America is really small scale. We ain't shooting off bombs.
Right.
We ain't robbing Wall Street.
Yeah.
We ain't building McDonald's, thousands of restaurants. What we doing is small time stuff.
Yeah, we ain't infiltrating governments.
Right. we ain't toppling Kuwait.
Right.
We ain't doing that. What are we doing? Selling drugs on the corner.
Right.
Sleeping with multiple women.
Mm-hmm.
This stuff is small time compared
Right.
to the real criminal.
Right.
But they'll make you believe that we the worst people on the face
Yeah.
of the earth. Doing all type of wickedness. No.
Yeah. And they say that they the peacekeepers. That's why
Right.
they got to come into the neighborhood.
Right.
We get over sentence all
There
the time.
you go. There
Can I
you
get
go.
a script count?
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. About time.
Habakkuk chapter 1 verse 4.
Bring it out.
Praises, all praises.
Because that's what they do, you know. During my time of living, I done been in a little trouble. And I actually done beat a couple of cases. But at the end of the day, did I really beat these cases?
Right.
When you do your research or read that?
The book of Habakkuk, chapter 1 and verse 4. Therefore the law is slacked, and judgment doth never go forth. For the wicked doth compass about the righteous. Therefore wrong judgment proceeded.
Right. I done had a few cases where they accused me of doing something that I didn't do.
Right.
Spent thousands of dollars, won the case, but look at all the money I spent.
Right.
Just imagine the brothers that don't have the money.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And not to mention, once they get you in there, they'll offer you 5 years.
Take a plea
You don't
deal.
even score out the 5 years.
Right.
And then they say if you take it to trial, they're gonna give you 30.
Yeah.
Dang. Wow.
Wow.
Punishment for
That's
exercising your rights.
Right.
So they get you both ways. You know what I'm saying?
That's what you was talking about with the money part. The
Right.
scripture in
you go.
Ecclesiastes, it said money is a defense.
Money is a
Right.
defense.
You can buy your defense
Right, literally.
attorney
Literally.
and get possibly get up out of that thing. That is heavy.
And you know what's crazy about that? When you think about something like that and you ain't got no money, you like, hey, I can get 5 years and I'm good,
Right.
or be looking at 30 years.
Mm,
That's you doing that in your head. You're like, hey, all right, I'll take the plea deal.
right.
That's
Yeah.
an easy, and I think we did a show on that too about plea deals, but the system is jacked up.
Yep.
Where's the plea deal at in the scriptures?
Right.
Right.
They make you put your hand on the Bible, but then they give you a
There
plea
you go.
deal. I ain't never read about a plea deal in the scriptures.
Nah.
I ain't read about it.
That
But
thing crazy.
this system is jacked up, man.
It
It's
is.
jacked
It's
up.
been like this for.
They created it like this.
It's actually done got worse in the 80s than it was in the 60s.
Right.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? The 80s to now is worse.
Yep.
It's more of us in the jailhouse than back then.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead and play that next video. So this one goes into a little bit of how these things happen with the wrongful conviction.
Bring it up.
Go ahead.
So where do our beliefs and opinions come from? And how do we make sense of the world that we live in? We like to think that we're able to make judgments and decisions about the world around us in an objective and logical way. But this is not necessarily the case because of the way that our brain processes and store information. In everyday life, we are exposed to a huge amount of information. And this information differs for everybody because we don't experience life exactly in the same way. And in order for your brain to make sense of the world that you live in and process all of this information, it will use filters and shortcuts. And this is all extremely beneficial because that filter will optimize the information processing. Why do we, for example, during election season, only tend to look for information that paints our favorite political party in a good light, and look for and remember information that will cast our opposing political parties in a negative light? Regardless of what political party you're voting for, you would never go out and Google negative information about them. This phenomenon is known as confirmation bias, which could be described as the human tendency to selectively gather and process information in order to confirm our assumptions and preconceptions, whether they are true or not. Decades of research within psychology and social science have shown that confirmation bias does not only affect how we gather information, but also how we process and remember information. The bottom line is that we as humans tend to weigh evidence that supports our prior belief to a greater degree than evidence that will contradict them. Everybody is biased, it's just part of human nature. So how does this relate to the criminal justice system and forensic science? If we take forensic science as an example, one experiment looked into initial exposure to context at a crime scene to look at whether or not if you're exposed to a certain type of context initially, would that affect how you make interpretations at a later stage? And this specific experiment considered forensic archaeology and anthropology excavations, where participants were asked to excavate burials with cast skeletal remains that were male, and they were dressed in female clothing. And what happened was that the students who excavated the skeleton that had female clothing, later on when they were asked to assess that skeleton, it affected the way that they interpret that male skeleton, compared to, for example, the control group and the people who were exposed to gender-neutral clothing, showing a difference in the interpretation of that same skeleton. And this is not to say that forensic scientists are bad people doing bad things, but this has to do with the fact that as humans, our brains are subject to limitations.
Pause.
We need to take...
So what she's going into is that there's a bias when you're dealing with these cases. So how do you think black men are perceived? What's the perception when you walk into the courtroom, you're 20 years old, and somebody got raped, and you were somewhere around the scene,
right?
And you're being judged by all middle-aged white people.
Yeah,
you done.
Yep,
you're finished. It don't matter what you do or say. That preconceived bias that they already have in their head is finished.
Right. Same thing when you selecting juries, right?
Yeah.
When when you walk in the courtroom, a question that always gets asked when you're doing jury selection is, who walked into the courtroom today and said, I wonder what he's innocent of?
Wow.
Your first question is always, what did he do?
Right.
Why is he in this position? Because a lot of people, and that's part of the purpose of jury selection, is to make the selection more fair. It actually doesn't work that way.
Right.
But it's to try and kind of ferret out those biases with people who are just like not smart enough to either hide those biases or they just want to leave and not really serve on jury. Because everybody has them. It's just how much do you want to mask those things?
So what you're saying is, and I didn't know this until I became an adult, they actually pick the jurors.
That part.
They actually pick the people that you get judged by. The lawyer, who does it?
The lawyer does it.
The lawyer picks your jury.
Yes. Well, so it works like this, right? So you have an opportunity on both sides to question all the jury veneer. It's a process called voir dire. So what happens is Usually, the state goes first. They ask their questions to try and get out all the biases. They want to know if you have any bias against cops, against the system, if you know anybody in the courtroom, if you have any personal experiences or know anybody who has those personal experiences that will cause them to unfairly judge the matter in a side that is less favorable for the state.
It's also supposed to be the people or your peers too, right?
Right. That's who you're eventually supposed to have on the jury itself.
Right.
But the jury veneer, the potential jurors can be really anybody. Once it gets down to those 6 or 12, depending on who you're talking about, then you have the ability to kind of argue that I didn't have a jury of my peers, and you know there's processes to go through that. But in essence, right, both sides get to kind of question each jury member if that's how they decide to do it, or ask kind of broad questions, see who raises their hands, kind of dig into it to be able to kind of figure out who is the best person per se to be on the jury.
To hang that particular person.
Well, not necessarily, you know, but that's how it tends to go, because a lot of people hold a lot of their cards close to the chest, and you have a lot of attorneys who are not experienced in trying to kind of make them open up to see where they really stand.
Gotcha. So say you get somebody, they are unfavorable to your client. You can kick them out.
All right, so there are things in jury selection, right? They call peremptory strikes. You, depending on what kind of case you either get 3 or 6 per side, right? With your peremptory strikes, you can say something about that person is off to me. I don't really know, but I'm doing it, right? Now, the other side can come back and say you're doing it based on some kind of illegal bias, either race, gender, or something like that. But you have to overcome that by saying what your race neutral or whatever other neutral reason is for kicking that person off the jury.
And it sounds a lot of times it's based on the questions that they ask them. If they don't agree with the questions that they're asking them, they don't want them on the jury anyway, right?
Right.
So that's all propaganda, a bunch of BS.
So that's interesting. I didn't go too much into that. So we're gonna show y'all a few stories of brothers and sisters that went through this. Go to the next video.
New York today, a stunning development in a murder case NBC News has been following for nearly 3 years. A man freed this past spring after being wrongfully imprisoned for 2 decades, shocked a Bronx courtroom today by asking a judge not to throw out the case against him. Telling me in an exclusive interview he is determined to expose where and how the justice system went wrong. Richard Rosario is free, but still a prisoner to the memories of 20 years behind bars for a wrongful conviction. Obviously, your best day was getting out of prison. What was the lowest day?
Every time I think about that cell.
Today, in a Bronx courtroom, as prosecutors tried to right the wrong and formally dismiss the murder case against him, Rosario did the unthinkable. He asked for the murder case against him to remain open until his name is cleared.
The public should know the truth. The families of the victims should have that clarity and that peace of mind that, you know, a murderer is not in the street and that their son received the justice that he deserved.
I first met Rosario 2 years ago in prison. His story has never changed. Did you shoot him?
No.
And why are you here? Rosario was convicted of the 1996 murder of teenager George Colazzo in the Bronx after 2 witnesses identified him. But Rosario offered police his own witnesses, more than a dozen who would say he was in Florida when the murder happened. What did you tell Detective Silverman?
I told them the 13 alibi witnesses I named them, gave them phone numbers.
On his list, Janine and John Torres, who remember the date well. Torres is now a Florida sheriff's deputy.
My son was born on June 20th, 1996, and they're claiming that Richard killed someone on June 19th, 1996, which that's physically impossible because he was in my house when we were leaving for my wife to go to the hospital.
Torres says he was never contacted by New York police. Others on the list reached by NBC News say the same. Rosario was convicted and sentenced to 25 years to life. 2 decades later, his appeals exhausted, Rosario's surprise break came this past March after his lawyers from the Exoneration Initiative convinced brand new Bronx DA Darcel Clark to take a fresh look at the case.
You are hereby released.
His conviction was vacated. Rosario was freed. Clark's office concluded he didn't get a fair trial.
You want this system to say it made a horrible mistake.
Yes.
The question today was whether he would be retried, but the prosecution moved to dismiss the case when Rosario shocked the courtroom, rejecting the dismissal. Though reunited with his wife and children, Rosario's refusal to accept a dismissal of the case leaves him still free but not cleared, as the court wrestles with what it admits is uncharted ground.
If I had to spend every day of my life in prison to prove my innocence, I would have been prepared to do that.
The NYPD has refused to comment on the case. Meantime, the judge has adjourned the proceedings until August. The Rosario case is the subject of a 12-part digital series called Conviction.
So, also, Makai, I want you to explain to me, what's the difference between getting a case thrown out and going through trial? Because he said he didn't want to get his case thrown out. He want to go through it.
Right.
What's the difference?
So basically what's going on with this, and this is actually, it's kind of shocking to me as well, but he's actually trying to abide by the scriptures in a way. I'm gonna explain my point. So what he's trying to do right here is not just have the case thrown out, because if the case thrown out, Judge Baines has got a case dismissed, that's it, right? Charges are dropped.
Right.
But what he wants is basically an exoneration for the judge to say that these charges were done illegally, and he wants the information to come out, because there has to be a secondary procedure to happen. I don't know what the procedures are in that particular state, but in order to kind of reveal that evidence,
showing
that's
what they did to get him.
Exactly. He wants it to be put on stage in front of the world so everybody can see what's going on.
Gonna happen.
So what you saying? They just throw it out.
Right.
They don't care what you say.
Right. You better be happy we let you go after 20 years.
Right. That's what I'm saying. But he said he's willing to die for it. So what he's doing, that's how some of our people, we do honorable things, but then you tell them not to eat pork and your part slap.
Yeah.
So this is what our people don't understand. The solution is not within the system. He's trying to change the system within the system.
Right.
You can't do that. Go
Their
to the
cognition.
Right.
It wrote the system.
Right.
Meaning that if their mind that will never change wrote the system will never change, because that's their mind. Come on, people.
Right. Can I get a script real quick?
Yeah.
All right. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3. This is what he's trying to do right here. He's trying to make sure to spread far and wide to as many people as possible on what exactly the scripture is talking about right here.
Bring it out.
2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3.
2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, but that day shall not come.
Meaning the day of Christ's coming, read.
Except there be a falling away
Us
first.
falling away from who we are as a people, the law, statutes, and commandments. And this is the point, read.
And that man of sin be revealed.
That man of sin is the devil that the Bible speaks of. Esau, who runs the courtrooms, who created the laws, who probably arrested him and everything in between to be able to get this man wrongfully convicted. But he is telling the people that he wants that man to be revealed. So at the end of the day, there's no question on who exactly the devil is. Just like the woman earlier. You are evil. She wants that to be exposed. Same way this brother does.
Yep. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Yeah.
Yeah, you was saying earlier, Cap, about being exonerated. Let's go back to Isaiah chapter 42, verse 24. Because start with 23. Because this is the only way we're going to get exonerated from our oppressors, from the wicked, from Esau.
Right.
Isaiah chapter 42, verse 23.
Bring it out.
Who among you will give ear to this? Who will hearken and hear for the time to come?
Read.
Who gave Jacob for a spoil, and Israel to the robbers?
Who gave Jacob for a spoil and Israel to the robbers? Right. You know?
Did not the Lord?
Did not the Lord. The Lord didn't causing all this to happen to the black, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Because of why? Read.
He against whom we have sinned.
Because we sinned. This is why we filling up the jailhouses all over the world.
There you go.
Read.
For they would not walk in his ways, neither were they obedient unto his law.
So we got to come back to the laws of God. This is how we get exonerated.
There you go.
by coming back to the laws of God.
There you go. Play that one.
Sources are telling me Devante Sanford is already being transported back to this area and then finally set to be released as early as tomorrow. The 23-year-old has been in prison since he was 14 years old after police said he had confessed to the murders of 4 people. The incredible part of this story is that 2 weeks after the 4 homicides on Runyon Street in Detroit, another man known as Vincent Smothers, a self-confessed hitman, admitted to numerous killings, including those 4 that sent Sanford to prison.
Pause.
Still remarkable.
So somebody else admitted to doing the crimes, and they still kept the other brother locked up. Obviously, he had some type of mental issues for him to admit that he did it. They probably coerced him into saying that he did it.
Right.
He was 14 years old, right? Scared. Hey, listen.
Squeeze on
If you just like we saw the movie When They See Us, if you tell us that you did it, you can go home. You know, you 14. You look, you're like, all right, cool, I did it.
I miss my friends. I miss my bed. My mommy was crying when I seen her. Like, all of that stuff takes a toll.
Yeah, man.
Press play.
Remarkably, it's taken this long for state police to examine what Detroit police did with the case all that time, and for the legal system to free the now 23-year-old. An emotional press conference with Devante's attorney giving us more insight into what's just happened and the significance.
And this case puts it on full display about how things can happen, about how a 14-year-old child can be coerced into giving a false confession, and how the courts are going to rely on that confession. And what's to say that the court shouldn't rely on it? What's to say that Judge Sullivan shouldn't have relied on that confession? Well, it was his defense attorney's job to challenge that confession.
Right now I'm here with Bill Proctor, former Action News reporter. And Bill, you worked very hard on this case to bring this to light and to see this young man freed.
Many years ago, we were the first to reveal the misconduct on the part of the Detroit Police Department, essentially orchestrating the confession that sent this young man of diminished mental capacity, by the way, to prison. But then, after all these years, there's a big question for Kim Worthy. Why did it take her so long, knowing that only weeks after Devante's incarceration, that a very credible confessor stepped forward to say he is responsible?
What does it mean for Devante and the others who could still be locked up, innocent men wrongfully in prison?
Finally, after all these many years, Devante Sanford and his family can see justice. But it is extremely difficult because of the prosecutor's decision to simply let what has been done stay in place. It never should be that way. There should always be a review in claims of actual innocence.
Thank you, Bill, for talking with us and for all your hard work bringing this important story to light. Meantime, we want to tell you.
All right. So what we're seeing here is that this system is corrupt. And when we was looking for content, there's thousands of these stories. I could just keep throwing them up over and over and over and over again. But 14-year-old, not all there up top. They get them to coerce a story. Somebody else admits that they did it, and they still take away 10 years of his life.
Right.
This is the system that we're relying on. This is the America that they ain't gonna say is inside of the American dream. This is for you so-called Haitians and Jamaicans and Puerto Ricans that want to come to America, and you think the streets are paved with gold.
Yep.
No, that's not the case.
That gold is just shiny doo-doo.
Right.
They call it justice after him doing 10 years.
Right. After what about the 10 years of his life that he lost? What about him being 15-year-old in high school, having friends, going to lunch? He will never know what that is or what that's like. He's jacked up. Now, and I think that's the biggest time in most kids' lives. Right. Transforming into adulthood, it's gone. He can't get that back. He can't go back to school. You don't go back to high school.
Recompense.
Right.
Recompense.
You can't get that time period back.
Bring it out.
You can't get it back.
We used to scream black power while heroin was pushed. But at the end of the day, nothing's in vain. I.U.I.C. has been given a vision. The tents of Judah has risen. Many has attempted the mission. Minor murmuring, omitting, and missing the mark. Just reading that he had the flame of fire in his eyes gave us the spark. We on Paul's mission. We out on the road, purple and gold. From Mexico, Cuba, Haiti, Ghana, Sierra Leone. 144,000 boots banging, concrete crackling. These are our men repented at heart. The scriptures is proof. I.U.I.C, we deliver the truth.